Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. For those who don't know who I am, my name is James Weeks. I'm the author of the book Meditations Across the King's River, African Inspired Wisdom for Life's Journey. Um, I offer strategies for emotional well being, spiritual well being, financial well being. To learn more about me, just visit acrossthekingsriver.com. Today, I'm very honored to have a special guest with us all the way from the United Kingdom, Dalian, Adofo, and Verona Spence. And they are the dynamic couple behind one of the most popular websites and Facebook profiles on African spirituality, Ancestral Voices. So welcome, Dalian. Welcome, Verona. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, James. Good to see you again as well. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us on. We're honored to be here. Thank you.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, you all have been in this space for a long time. I think like almost a decade now. Since I started on my own journey, I would say a lot of people have come and gone, or a lot of other pages have come and gone. But you all have been consistent with your messaging, consistent with the education, consistent with bringing out new products and services. And I wanted to find out, well, what keeps you going? What motivates you to continue this fight? What would you say your fight is all about?
Yeah, you want to go?
I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
You go.
yeah. I don't know. It's a very good question. I think definitely in the beginning, it was just like this drive, this passion that was just like, we have to do this. It wasn't even something we thought about. And I think now, 12 years down the line, it very just feels like much of like part of our life experience anyway. So it would actually feel unnatural to not do it. So now it's just, how everyone has their regular rituals and routines that they do in their lives. This is what we do. So it's kind of like whenever we come into new information, or
Mhm.
for myself, when I kind of tap into my own uh, spiritual insights, I feel compelled to share. And then I think what motivates us is actually seeing the responses and how people, benefit from receiving the knowledge. And for many people, it acts as a way of confirmation. So I think it's just part of the service that we do, of our personal spiritual contract. So being here is to be a vessel to allow this kind of information to be disseminated, and for those who resonate with the information to have access to it. So that's my personal information. It's kind of like, as much as Ancestral Voices is something that we provide, it's also something that we get back so much from it in terms of helping people on their own personal journeys, and just hearing how some people are inspired by the work that we do is definitely motivation for me. Yourself?
Yeah, it's a very important question, because it's I guess why your reason for being in a sense, So I think what it is, James, is the fact that the African story continues to be marginalized, continues to be stigmatized, and if you're someone who is identifying or is not of, I guess, that European, because that's the powerful political paradigm of the moment, your story gets ignored or shifted to the side. So for me personally, what the driving force is, if you will, is the fact that the story, my story, and the story of my ancestors and people who look like me or are codified like me matters. And the fact that we can see that in the mainstream there's not that much space made for us, it becomes a burning desire to ensure, because I feel I matter, we have to put our story and our ways also out there because it matters, so
Right. I love those answers. Verona, as you were speaking, I was reminded yesterday I was having a conversation with a client and a friend, and he was asking me, like, why do I post every day? And I told him it's kind of similar to what you said, a little bit different. But I was telling him that for me, the reason why I do what I do is because I know that every day there are people around the world that are needing inspiration, or they need hope, they need some direction. And so for me, I can't not do it. And I was telling him that, you know, if I was, you know, if I was told I had 2 hours left on planet Earth, I would still do it. If I had to go into surgery and I was told I need to go into surgery for 2 to 3 hours from now, well, I would still do it because I know that there's someone out there who needs some type of lift up, you know what I mean? And so, and it's beautiful to hear you all say how much it is a part of your life. You all have done such, long-term commitment work. So I wanted to ask you, well, how did it begin for you all? I mean, in my case, people who know my journey know that one of the things that led me down this path was a crisis in my family with my son many, many years ago. I was wondering what led you all down the path of African spirituality?
Yeah, you wanna go?
Um, I mean, you can start and I can continue
Okay.
because
Yeah. Well.
it literally starts with our own
Yeah.
individual journeys and then joining
Yeah.
together. So you may as well start because you started before
Yeah,
me
I
on that.
guess
So
because it's about how Ancestral Voices started. It really starts off with a conversation, and the conversation again going back to exactly what we talked about, which was where's the African story? Because at the time when Ancestral Voices was conceived, I was a practicing Buddhist. As much as I don't practice anymore, even in my African spiritual practice, I can see those elements where Buddhism also still exists and still exists as a parallel theory, if you will. So in our conversation, we had to ask ourselves, how come we've been through all these different traditions and we know we're learning so much about what resonates more with us, what is not as conflicting or rather constraining as a religious ideology. Where's our story, and that was what brought Ancestral Voices forward. It's about where's the African story. We've gone through all these other systems, but we don't really know our ancestral ways the way that we should. So that's for me where the story started, that conversation.
yeah, so Dalian was already on the path in terms of paying reverence to his grandma. So he kind of adopted his own ancestral reverence practice that he was following. So then when we came together, I was fascinated to find someone else who was on the path as well. So it was just like, wow, we share this in common. There was an interest. I personally came down a kind of new age spirituality route, but was questioning once again, where is the representation for African people? Why is our story not being told? So as we were having these conversations amongst ourselves, as we were discovering our own spirituality and really tapping more into ancestral knowledge, we were inspired to really take this journey that is a personal one, but make it more of a wider conversation. And that's what led to us coming together to make the documentary Esoteric African Knowledge, which we started filming in 2010. And that was literally because we had this idea that if this is inspiring to us and this is fascinating to us, and all this information that we've been told historically is negative and evil and primitive and backwards and all these terms that are used, but we were learning all these teachings, we're like, this is actually empowering, this is very inspiring, this actually, we can look at tenets from here and see they exist in other spiritual traditions. So one is why why is one being stigmatized and another being revered? And so we decided to use our skill set. Dalian is from an academic background. We both have experience within media. So we used our skill set, put it together, and literally made a documentary. So, despite working in the media industry from before, I literally learned how to edit whilst we were doing the film. Like, this is the motivation that we had. So that is how literally Ancestral Voices came to be. And then whilst we were making the documentary, we also set up our Facebook profile. And then once we kind of set up that digital platform, then it kind of took off and became a whole entity within itself. And then ever since then, we've been putting out content which has evolved from, social media content, documentaries, books, and now courses as well.
Wow, I didn't realize you had a media background. That's powerful to know. I have to say there was a time last year when I really thought about the work you all are doing a lot, and I'll tell you why. It's because in the United States, I was listening to a Medium talk. It was online. It wasn't like in person, and this was a European medium who's like well known in the United States, a white woman, and she made a comment that it just like it just showed me how important and relevant this work is. She made a comment. She was talking about how when you go into certain places, you could feel like spiritual energies, and she was talking about like in Auschwitz, if you were in Auschwitz, you would feel certain energies because of the cruelties of what happened. And then she went on to say, Santeria is dark energy,
Wow.
you
Okay.
know, and
Yeah.
it just stopped me in my track. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe that this woman who's well known in the United States
Mm-hmm.
made a comment like that. And then she made a comment again. She repeated a comment. Oh, Santeria is dark energy, and those people's something like I can't remember what she said, sacrificing, you know, animals in the mountains or whatever. And it blew me away that she would say that. And to be honest, it's not that I think she's like a racist per se. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just like these attitudes that people have, because she actually comes from like a Catholic background originally. But it just showed me how she just made this one statement, and in that one statement, she dismisses an entire civilization of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And then the people that she's telling this to, they're not going to question her because they're listening to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to take on that racist ideology, and that's how the whole cycle of colonialism or racism is perpetuated. And it just made me reflect on the work you all are doing and say, well, we have to continue that fight. We have to
Yeah.
continue
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
advocating for our story. I
Absolutely.
wanted to ask for people who are not that familiar with our traditions, what would you say? Um, I want to ask you, well, what do you feel the greatest benefits are, and how has it transformed your own lives?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me personally is, I mean, one thing I noticed from the very beginning, as I mentioned before, I came from a sort of new age spirituality. That's where I came into sort of self awareness. I grew up in a Christian household that wasn't very much, we weren't practicing in the sense, I didn't go to church, but it was that doctrine was still there. So it was only through the new age spirituality where I started to come in knowledge of myself. However, for me, as much as the information resonated with me, it was only when I started looking into African spiritual teachings and understanding the importance of ancestral reverence and developing that relationship that I feel propelled me to a whole nother level, which I never experienced in any other sort of spiritual form in my life. So for me, that understanding that you were a culmination of all your ancestors who came before you, and that at any point in time, you're able to tap into that ancestral memory and access that knowledge, that support system. That for me is the most greatest and most empowering thing, because I would say since I've started walking this path, I never feel lonely. And the reason why I say that is I can be in a room by myself, but I can feel content, I can feel supported, and I feel that I have a wealth of information and love and support around me. And there's nothing that I think can exceed that for me personally.
Oh, that's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, be it that, just to be sure, James, that the question is, what since we started this journey, have we found it in terms of aiding our well-being?
Yes, in
Yes.
whatever way, and
Yeah,
how
of course, of course. For me, I think the most powerful aspect of learning more about the ancestral ways is just realizing, because the more you get into it, first of all, your understanding of what we call existence changes. What we think is reality changes, and what is reality itself made up of changes. Because spirituality really just compels you to find you, the deepest aspect of you. So in a sense, really, you cannot really have teachers. You can only really have people who are guiding you. And when you have the very fact that the very elements themselves can also guide you, because you have a medium of being able to access information from what you call existence or nature itself. It's a very powerful place to be, because it reminds you that you have abilities that you perhaps haven't made enough effort to connect with. So for me, that has been the deepest learning, and the most positive of the learning. The very fact that, at the core of African spirituality is about what's your superpower. What's as you may know, the Yorubas call your ori. What is it that makes you so special for you to be alive? And you should be able to harness this power and use it to not only, in a sense, better your life, but also those who are in your wider network or community.
Yeah.
So for me, that's been the most uplifting and powerful thing about seeking the ancestors.
That's so beautiful. I love both of your answers. The fact that you said like you could feel not alone, and you're talking about, I think, tapping into yourself. I love that because I feel people often forget that, well, we have a spiritual power or a superpower. I call it a superpower. And I feel that some of these superpowers are developed during times of adversity. Then I also realize, and I always, when I work with people, if we're not willing to be ourselves, we could never get to this superpower because we're not being ourselves. Um, Oftentimes, when I work with people, they often say things, they often feel like, well, they're not receiving messages. I hear this a fair amount. Oh, they don't feel like so connected, or they don't feel like, ancestors are not speaking to them.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to that? Or what advice do you give in cases like that where people are feeling, well, maybe something's not wrong, something is off, they're not connected? How do you deal with that? What advice do you give?
What I normally say is, first of all, it's about attuning your awareness, because a lot of us expect these grand gestures and, I don't know, lightning strikes in the sky. We assume that ancestral communication is this big dramatic event, and so that's why most people are not aware when these things happen. But I always tell people, pay attention to the minor details, the things that you literally take for granted every day, whether it's overhearing a conversation when you're walking down the street and everything that they're saying is so relevant to your life right now, or you're walking down the street and a little butterfly may land on your shoulder, or I don't know, if you may have done a ritual the night before and then the next day you see something that references what you were asking for in that moment. So all of these little subtle forms are forms of spiritual communication. But I would tell people that, you know, just start to become aware of your environment. You could notice that you start attracting a lot more animals in life. You may start finding cats and dogs are just following you home. Like, these things happen, and most people just think, "Oh yeah, I saw that, but I didn't think anything of it." I'm like, "Well, there you go. That's a sign." What do you think that is representing? If we look at things like cats, for example, that is a sign of ancestral protection. And I think that the more people become attuned with themselves, the more they have become more perceptive of reality and what truly is reality, and not what we've kind of bought into. And so when we have that more internal reflection, then we're able to perceive these messages when they occur. So,
Yeah, no, I don't think there's much more I can add to that than beyond. I remember when we were interviewing Sobon Fusumi, and she said the exact same thing. People are looking for this grand event to happen. We're so programmed by Hollywood media. I remember a friend, actually, this brings to mind, a friend sent me a WhatsApp clip, and I believe it's somewhere in Asia. I think Indonesia or Singapore, one of them. They have this old kind of folk lore where they have these concepts of, I don't know, they're meant to be ghosts. So when the COVID period was really at its height, what they would do is they would get people to dress up in this mummy looking white thing to scare people to stay at home. And my friend was asking me the question, oh, so if it was you, would you react in the same way? Because people were diving into the middle of the road, some were diving into rivers. And I said to him, that's not how spirit manifests. It won't look like something. First of all, you having an interaction with spirit of that nature is to guide you along a certain path. Why would spirit come to give you a heart attack? Like it won't make any sense. But then this is how the media makes certain things look, I guess, exotic or mysterious or more than what they should be. So it's exactly that. Every moment, the very fact that you're breathing. I was on a show recently and we were discussing this. The very fact that you're breathing, the air you're taking in and out, that's an exchange of information. It's what's also keeping you alive. So in that conversation, what we were discussing was the fact that then we need to rename the wind as God, because if you don't have access to air/wind, breath, you're dead. It's the most important thing to your sustenance. So yes, most people who say that, coming back to your question, Brother James, is they're looking for something, and as V said, missing the obvious. Because there's the very fact that you have life means you have a spirit. and that spirit cannot exist outside of everything that's connected and communicating with each other. So perhaps we need to stop looking for grand things and realize the messages. They're there. They're very subtle. They're very direct. And that way we don't overlook them, because we seem to think they're not of any consequence, you know? Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love both your answers so much. I love you all are just sharing such powerful nuggets. I hope people are listening and paying attention. Um, so take us back to the film that you did, your first film, I believe, Ancestral Voices, Esoteric African Knowledge. Um, I mean, for people who haven't seen it yet, one question is, where can they purchase that? And secondly, what were some of your most profound experiences when you were working on that first documentary?
So I don't mind doing that one. I think there was well, first of all, if anyone wants the documentary, that can be obtained on our website, ancestralvoices.co.uk. But the point that stands out to me in that whole experience, which was just very surreal, we were filming one of the Akomfos when we were in Ghana. And in this process, he actually went into trance. So he was channeling, and we were filming him. Well, I was filming him. Dalian was interviewing him, and he was acting very erratic in his behavior. Did he have like a sharp?
Some kind of sharp.
He had some kind of sharp object in his hand, and it was really weird because like we were filming him, and I was behind the camera, so I felt that I had some kind of distance. So it was just I was there just observing and thinking, wow, we're really doing this. Like, how did we get here to do this? But as we were doing it, I was just like fascinated, but also very proud as well that we're capturing this, because this is our story, and it's really important for us to be able to tell our story, and authentically as well. That's one of the things we wanted to do, is we want to tell the story from the people themselves. When you watch a lot of stuff on television which documents various different cultural traditions, it's always someone outside of the tradition, outside of the culture, saying this is what they're doing. We wanted them to explain. So for me, it was just very fascinating to see that whole process taking place. I've never witnessed it before up until that point. So it was just like, wow, this is crazy but amazing. What about you? And scary as well, actually. It was a bit scary because you just didn't know what he was going to do next.
Yeah, because you don't know if he's in control of the object he's wielding, or what is controlling him and how his movements are going. So you could be the next target, and I was the one sitting the closest to him. But Ancestral Voices, Esoteric African Knowledge, what that first film deals with, because for us, as you know, we mentioned earlier, Brother James, is that the film started from a place of where's our story? So why is A, nobody covering our story, or B, when our story is covered, it's always from a negative kind of framework or a negative perspective. So we couldn't just make a film and then just say, hey, look, this is what African spiritual traditions have been doing from millennia till now. Because there's been so much negativity built up and so much ignorance around it, we had to try and meet many different needs. So to first hit the ignorance aspect, there's a section of the film that deals with many religious ideas, quote unquote, that we find in African spirituality. So by kind of comparing these two systems in such a light, we would invite the viewer to then ask themselves the question, but why am I thinking this one is negative if it's so similar to, let's say, my Christianity or my Islam? By having that comparison, we kind of disconstruct a certain lie, And then another part of the film too also had to deal with, but why then has it, or do we look at it in this manner? So then we look at how there's an institutionalized discrimination. There's an institutionalized machine that has existed for some centuries. And its sole purpose is to make everyone think African spirituality or any derivative of it. And you even use Santeria. Santeria is more the kind of whitewashed version of African spirituality. So for another white person to even deem that Santeria itself is dark energy, that tells you a lot. Again, it speaks to that level, because it's centuries of ignorance. So, we had to show the receipts. This is why you think it's negative, because for millennia, they've been, whether it's the media, whether it's other religions, whether it's this, that, and the third, so we had to deconstruct the lie, expose the lie by comparing it with the ideas and the traditions as well as in the religions, and then just put a few of some of the ideas, the sacred concepts that we find, to give people a place to start, and I want to give Eric Kalmbach a big shout out. Thank you for the affirmation of both films.
Yeah,
we love
so
Eric.
much.
Eric
Eric's
is
been a good supporter of our work. We really give thanks to anyone who supported us, and thank you, Nana Komfoba. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Nana, and thanks to all of you viewers who are listening. We welcome your comments, your questions. So, Dalian, I want to ask you this question. So, you talked about the institutional machine, know, and so I know that historically, the institutional machine against African spiritual traditions was an attempt to make sure that we don't have any power. I mean, this is part of the whole colonial thing as well. They don't want us. They want total control, right? They don't want us to have any kind of power, any kind of things that could, mess up their plan. But I want to ask you this question. So what function do you think that institutional machine plays today in our times? Today, what would you say? I'm curious to hear what you would say.
Wow. Today, I think it hasn't really changed much its direction, Brother James, because it still does the same thing. And that institutional machine. So, for instance, if we go and look at things like the media. So, recently, I believe a week or so ago in Haiti, there were mass protests that came about as a result of the fact that their oil that they produce in their own country was being shipped off abroad. So there were local militia who then got together and said, "Nah, you can't take our resource out of the country in this manner," right? Somehow America and France could get their military onto the ground and murder a whole heap of people just to get their oil flowing again to their countries. And the way the media reported it, and are still reporting it now, I'm sure anyone can Google it to find it. You see that they say Haiti is now in the hands of gangs, organized gangs who are doing criminal this, who are doing criminal that. Do you know what I mean? So that institutional machine hasn't stopped. When there's an earthquake in a place like Haiti, because Haiti is the only place that we know, you see, it's about the evidence that African spirituality played a huge role in the liberation of this area. We've not seen that anywhere else. So it becomes very important to make sure that this place is still seen a particular way. So this is why we see that Haiti is continually referred to in a very negative light. This is all part of that same institutionalized machine. So, in Haiti's been ruled by gangs, but they haven't told you why there's even the need for the violence, which is they're sending out oil so that Europe and America doesn't have a very cold winter. But then they're demonizing the people who are fighting for their own resource to have access to it. It becomes important that they do this machine keeps going, James, because if we go to a place like, let's say, from my own country now, in Ghana, right? I remember my friend telling me a story about a man that he met in one of the quote unquote villages on a Sunday, and the man was very happy, like really excited. So he asked him, "But why are you so happy?" He said, "Today I've met Jesus, because they brought a new white priest into that area." Somehow in the African's mind, he could connect this new priest with this archetype or this other historical character or not, we call Jesus. So that institutional machine is a way in which you lock people's mind into a particular way of thinking, behaving, and doing. So it can't stop because it's intimately tied into what we call colonialism, capitalism, the furtherance of European domination over the world. Sadly, it's very tied into that. And it's shown, we have English Europeans who've written about from Jamaica to Haiti, because Jamaica actually had a lot more rebellions founded on spiritual leaders than Haiti does, and it is a matter of the historical record, So there's a lot of things we don't know about ourselves. Yes, sadly, it's not always possible for us to also have access to some of this information, but the institutional machine has to exist to make sure that anything that will allow you to be able to have, I guess, the broadest awareness of yourself and what you think you can do, that's his job, to stop that. To limit your I guess mental awareness of self and ability to such a state or level that you're willing to be led. So yeah, it's not gonna leave now. Sorry if I've just kind of
No.
but it's a very deep question.
I like Tenji's response to that question.
Yeah. No, I love that. So, and for those who are not that familiar with the history of Haiti, one thing I would recommend, among other things, is last year the New York Times did a special report on Haiti, and it's called "The Ransom." And in that news article, it was a series. They were explaining why Haiti is so poor, and what they were saying, and it's been well documented, although it's not well known, is for centuries after the Haitian Revolution, France really looted. They started to demand repayments for a loan. It's the first place in one of the only places in the world where the descendants of slaves had to pay back their colonial masters. So this went on for like centuries, and that is the reason why Haiti is in the way it is.
Right.
I think it's like in today's terms, it'd be like the equivalent of $21 billion that was taken out of Haiti. And that was Haiti, United States. So this whole, but to your point, Dalian, just that when I was reading that thing about the ransom in the New York Times, I realized that, wow, how could they have kept this as such a secret for so long?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why is it that not well known? So when people think of Haiti, they just think, oh, poor country. They must be uneducated. Maybe it's because they do voodoo, not realizing
that's the one.
There are these economic, these powerful forces that really, to your point, has taken the wealth and keeps taking the wealth.
Can I just sorry, I was just also going to add that you were asking about how the systems maintain this to this very day. One of the things that we've noticed is we've been trying to get our work into academic institutions, because we found is you can have all these variety of courses on all these different range of spirituality and religions. However, African spirituality is still very much not acknowledged within mainstream academia. So, and if you do, you're lucky enough to actually have a university that does have it. It's kind of like a very small amount of them that do include it, or it may just be a little excerpt or module that you'll get packed into something else. So it's not really given the same credibility or respect of other spiritual faiths. I also wanted to add as well, in terms of how collectively the system is changing or possibly still the same. We found personally what gave us a platform to put this information out was digital technology, because
when it was free.
Yeah, when it
and no
before the algorithms kicked in, because we were able to use that form of communication to get this message out to a wider audience, and we can see people were very receptive to it, because they were like, wow, someone's actually coming out with a different perspective I've never heard of before. However, that same system is in place because now technology is being used to also suppress the very same voices who have been trying to push out this alternative information. So that system is very much still, closing down, but there's still us within the system who still find ways to navigate through it. So yeah, it's an interesting time. Things are changing, but the opposition is definitely still in place.
Beautiful. As I work with people over the years, clients, one of the things I always emphasize to them is the importance of having some type of daily spiritual practice. I like to emphasize that, and when I work with people, I just suggest some things. But I know it's just an important part of spiritual maintenance. I wanted to find out what does your own spiritual practice look like on a daily basis, or what do you recommend to others, on this whole topic of why it's important to maintain a spiritual practice?
You can start with yours now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. Again, this is where it becomes very important that I repeat the point from earlier, Prophet James, which is spirituality deals primarily with the individual. The source of power within spirituality is the individual. And when I say the individual, let's not confuse it with individualism. I had a recent show that it really helped me to kind of separate these two concepts. Individualism, as we know it, is as we find expressed via capitalism and greed. Let me take everything for myself. In African spirituality, individuality means you come with something specific, something special to add to, like, let's say, the soup of life, if you will. Yeah. So let's not confuse when I say African spirituality is about the individual. I don't mean individualism. I mean individuality. What makes you so special? What makes you James? What makes Verona? What makes me? Yeah. And that individual, what you have is this gift or these talents that you have a reason for the world. So your primarily responsibility is to give that to the world. So it's the same thing too when it comes to ritual. Too often, sometimes people are waiting to say, oh, I need someone to tell me do A, B, C, D. And if I don't do A, B, C, D only, basically nothing is going to happen. Do you understand? You're a receptor of so much information that in more ways than one, you're actually being told what you need to be doing. But again, because we might miss the messages, we don't know. So I will always urge any and everyone that you also start with what your what people call your intuition, what this feeling that you get sometimes, or even what these thoughts that you get sometimes. So what I do in terms of ritual on a daily basis, because there's a reason why we wake and we sleep. There's a balance. Everything in life is balanced. So apart from you just being your physical self, you need to also have practices that also, or rather you use other practices to let you know that you're still connected. Your spirit is still connected with the forces out there, and it can be as simple as a libation. For me, I'm now initiated into the sect of Ogun. But before I didn't have a personal initiation. For me, my first initiation came with my desire to want to speak to my own grandmother and maintain a relationship with her. So as a result, I developed a series of practices, some of which just were guided to me, and I just followed those practices. So what is core is that every moment in the day, make some time to just, whether you do it psychically, whether you do it verbally, to affirm your understanding that you're connected to spirit. Yeah, whether you do that through a libation, whether you do that through an offering of food, or again, as I said, whether you sit even in silence and just imagine and connect with your ancestors in a mental dimension, if you will. Yeah, there's so many things that we can do. So for me, mine starts every morning with just an acknowledgement, on my altar. And then it's just a kind of mental imagining or even speaking, and then to say, the day started, bless my day, guide my day, direct my day. There's that acknowledgement, light a candle. But that's what I do now. And once upon a time, it would just be I'll leave out just a cup of water in the morning. Now, because of my initiation, there's also particular days when I have to add extra stuff to it. But that making time to acknowledge to spirit or energy that you are fully aware of the connection and are open to direction from the connection. However you do that, that's what that is. Yeah. So mine currently is lighting a candle at the altar and speaking verbally, inviting in the ancestors, the forces of creation. And then, if I have any other IFA requirements that I need to do, then I do those too. But that's what my daily, should we say, ritual practice looks like.
Very well answered. And so for me, mine is the same, really, in the sense that when I wake up, I'll do veneration for my ancestors. We have like a family altar, which we have that's dedicated for ancestral work. Whether it's a libation that I pour, and then Sometimes it will be a case of putting food out in nature as well. On a daily basis, we give offerings. I have my own personal altar space that will be done veneration at certain different times of the week. So it varies, and the thing is, I always don't like telling people specific things because, as you said, people can get locked into, oh, am I doing it wrong? Or, and I just feel like it's very important that people cultivate their own spiritual practice. Start with what feels comfortable with you. Start with what resonates with you. Never ever underestimate your own internal guidance. You know, you will be shown certain things to do. You may be guided to light a white candle at a particular time. That reminds me as well. So on a Friday, which is my day, a Kradin day amongst across the Akan tradition, I have my special venerations that I'll do on that day, which represents the day I was born as well. So I also do a veneration for my dad for the day that he was born as well. So there's different things that you can do, but as I said, do what resonates with you. And also, I don't know, there's times if I'm feeling like I need a particular energy boost or a cleansing, then I'll implement ritual baths to accompany my spiritual work. So it literally varies every day based on the requirements at the time. And if I have any other things that I'm trying to work through in my life, then I'll have different ritual setups that deal with those specific things as well.
Well, I love that. Love both of y'all are just such powerful souls. So one of the things that has I noticed on your journey about I think maybe 2 years ago, I can't remember, but I noticed that when you all first started, you were more in the educational space than you still are. But I think maybe over the past 2 years, I don't know when you started offering consultations to people. Could you tell us about that? What motivated you? And I was happy that you all started doing that because it showed me that, wow, you all have grown, and now you're at the point where you feel like confident that, hey, you have something to share, that you can empower others with the knowledge that you have. What led you to that and to make that decision? And then I also want to ask, as you work with people now as consultants, where do you find that people are stuck? I mean, where do you find that people are missing that key to empowerment?
Good question. Good question. Okay, so the first thing is, it's something that's been on the cards for us for a very long time. Obviously, we've been doing this work, and a lot of the times we were just kind of giving consultations anyway for free. So I think a lot of it was even us just kind of recognizing our own value and just realizing that as much as we're here to serve and be of service to others, there's a point where you need to kind of put boundaries in place. So I definitely had to learn that lesson. I put my hands up, and it's just a case of, you know, people who are like myself, very empathic. It's naturally that I want to help people. But it's realizing that there's ways to go about it, and not kind of, have people randomly contacting you and you're now putting everything on hold to deal with a situation. So it's more about structuring what we already were doing, but in a way that facilitates everybody in a way that makes sense. And so I feel like it was a natural progression, and it's been a wonderful thing to be able to offer that service to our audience, because for many years people have had questions but not necessarily someone to go and speak to. So it's been amazing to be able to work with people directly and give them that one-to-one time and connection. And I think with most people I've found in my sessions is that most people already know what they need to do, but it's almost like that reassurance. People need that extra guidance, that kind of push to say, it's okay for you to make a decision and go forward. And I think for many people, it's about learning to trust that inner guidance a lot more. And for many people, it's a case of just having that additional validation on what they already felt.
Yeah, no, as V said, I think it's a gradual progression, and it's also about coming to that stage where we realize that, in a sense, we had more to give than perhaps we'd even been thinking ourselves. So there's been many times I've gone places, whether when we're filming the film or even post that, where V will have certain dreams, and then those dreams you'll find it in a reality that comes soon, or even based on where I'm at. So for me, for years, I've always said, there's a gift that you have that you need to, because it's kind of different to what perhaps, film, the courses, whatnot. Make some space for it. And it's also, Brother James, about getting to that point where, because we had, well, they're still young. We have two sons, right? So it's about being able to maintain a kind of certain family life balance.
Yeah.
And I think we also got to a point where I was telling Verona, sometimes you take a whole heap of time, go and people send random questions to the ancestral voices, and I'm like, but these questions, if you had watched our film, you could have already answered that question, because we've covered this in the film. So again, for me, I started realizing, and I'm very big on this, that people need to, again, sit in the front seat of their own life and direct that properly. You can't just sit there and keep waiting to be spoon-fed. You notice that this happens a lot, especially
Yes.
when you have these, I guess, pages of influence, So I said, no, let's put it into a consultation, and you realize that people will start to respect your time better. In the same way you have people who come to us and say things like, oh, but why do you need to charge for this information or this knowledge? And I ask, so how do you think we're able to travel to South Africa, to Haiti, to Brazil, to document this knowledge that which otherwise wouldn't be here? When we speak like that, we realize that even those of us who are Africans/Black, you realize we don't have a lot of value for our own culture, because we've also bought into the idea that it needs to be either free, or it shouldn't cost anything at all. This is the same mindset that Europeans attach to African culture. So it becomes a bit weird to see other people of color also having the same view. But then it's understandable, because we're all indoctrinated in that same mindset, So the consultation, it was about, as V correctly said, yes, we can now. Our boys have got to an age where we have more flexibility, but also value your time. Let's put it out there. So V has more of that, I guess, spiritual ability to intuit and to let certain things come true. For me, where my abilities lie, obviously, falls more into a kind of academic understanding of certain things. So we've helped people write books. We've helped people put together the structure of their podcast. People who have written little drama pieces who didn't know anything about African spirituality. So they approached us for us to give them ideas about particular sacred concepts that might exist that will support a particular storyline. You see, so again, all of this, for many years, we would just be doing them for free, James. And it will be going on for sometimes a week, a month, and and this person will go on and turn that product into something else, and we wouldn't even see them again. So then I said, but this level of support is what I would do, because one of my backgrounds is in frontline teaching. This is what a professor would give a master's thesis student the time, and that time has to be shown in value, because that student has paid to come to the institution. So why are we sometimes going overboard because we're so concerned about the topic? We want us to all connect to our ancestral ways, but then sometimes, again, like we said, you have to find a balance. Otherwise, you find that you're teetering yourself over, and you won't even be able to sustain what you're doing. So that's where the consultations come in. So V is the one with the abilities for the dream interpretation, for getting better guidance in your life. For me, it's again that academic scholarly knowledge, but also again, if you really want to work in ritual, because for me, one of the things that I know as my gifts is, what are the complements we put together to create a ritual drama that we want to see manifest. So we've just worked to our own strengths, as you will. So that's how the consultations come in.
Well, that's beautiful. So then how can people, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you to either get a consultation or to purchase your courses or your books? What's the best way?
So everything for us is literally on our website. So www.ancestralvoices.co.uk, and on there, the educational tab will literally have all of our products, and there's a consultation tab where you'll get more information on the different, area of expertise Dalian and I have. And then you just go with who resonates with you. So as Dalian said, I'm more the sort of intuitive, dream interpreter, more helping people on a personal level on that aspect, whereas Dalian is the academic expert and ritual support and guidance as well. So, you know, everybody knows what they're naturally gravitated to. There might be an energy that we give off, or based on what we specialize in, you may feel like I need more help with that, but we're always happy to help.
Well, love that. So I want to ask you all a question that I like to ask people who come on as guests. I want to ask you, what is your advice to people who feel like down and out, like they're stuck, like they can't get ahead? What are your words of encouragement to those people who feel like, well, they're in a dark space now, they're not sure how their future will unfold, they're thinking about, ending it maybe?
Okay. Deep question. Okay, so ending it, that's quite hard when you put that one. That's a lot of pressure to put that one. But what I would say is try to avoid thinking ahead and be present in this moment. In this moment right now, what thought can you think of that will empower you? So whether it's an old memory of a time when you were having fun, remember that. What did it feel like? Tap into that energy, because a lot of times when people are in a sort of negative mindset, is because there's some unresolved issue that they haven't dealt with. It can be bringing itself to the surface, or there can be a lot of stress going on in their physical reality. And so it's really important to be able to use our minds to tap into something that keeps us motivated. Another thing I would also recommend is to allow yourself to experience joy and a release. And one of the simplest forms of doing that is like simply listening to like music, a song that you like, dancing, allow yourself to express yourself and have that freedom, or using art and creativity. So whether it's like drawing or painting as a way to express yourself, because many times people can get into these states because they're keeping everything locked in. So it's really important to be able to release that. So there are just a couple of suggestions that I would say, but also the most important thing is to be able to talk to somebody. To not hold everything, to be able to actually express yourself verbally to someone who's available to listen to you, but also connecting with nature. We don't understand how much that we are, spiritual beings. And one of the things that really helps us to connect and ground ourselves is to be out in nature. So that's one thing I'd recommend, whether you're going for long walks. If you can go barefoot, fantastic. If you have a garden, even better. Just taking lots of time out there. And the other thing I would also recommend is deep breathing, because as simple as it is, and you mentioned the power of breath before, but learning to control your breath and deep breathing has the ability to clear your mind, your thoughts, and just allow you to kind of raise your vibration within that moment. And so if we're dealing with a long-term depression problem, it's about being able to, within each moment, find something to hold on to that gives you that light, that encouragement to move forward. So it's a step-by-step process. It's not going to be addressed and healed overnight, but they're just a few strategies that I would recommend someone can do if they are feeling that way.
Yeah, well, I don't have as many techniques as V suggested per se. Mine is a lot more simpler, and it's one of the axioms that when you go to Ghana, you see we have these like buses. I think you might have in the Caribbean as well, and people write little proverbs on the back of them, as a way of inspiring themselves. And there's a very popular one in Ghana that it says, "No condition is permanent."
Yeah.
Do you understand? In life, no condition is permanent. So, even as you've talked about, Brother James, going to that finality, there really is no finiteness to the lived experience. And, maybe when I say, people might think, oh, you're not taking it seriously enough. You're taking it lightly. You don't know how much problems I have. But one thing I do know is no condition is permanent. So, you're in the condition today. It might be 2-3 weeks from now, condition gone. What you thought was a final devastating event that was about to occur may probably never even occur.
Yeah.
So you might be creating problems about problems for yourself for something that was just about to change. So what I'll add to what V is saying is that keep that in your head, that same statement, no condition is permanent, and go and sit in some grass and really think of your problem. We have another proverb, I can't remember how we say exactly in Tree, but it says, the more you ponder into something, that's how you understand it. So I don't believe that we have problems with no solutions. My perspective is you get the problem because there is a solution waiting for you to find it. That's how I've always, and the reason you have the problem is you haven't figured out how not to make that problem occur in your life, if what I'm saying makes sense. So every problem you have, there's also a solution. It's just that maybe it hasn't been found yet.
Yeah.
So take time, go sit in nature, remind yourself that condition is impermanent, and really, really think of the problem, why you're having that problem, how you got into that problem in the first place. Did somebody create that problem, or did some people create that problem for you? What are the solutions and the options that you have? You spend 30 minutes sitting on that grassy lawn with your feet touching the grass. You will start to see that first of all, your feelings are even going to change. The way you view the problem, the scale of it, the finality of it, all of that will shift. You understand? And within there, you will identify a way for you to at least move forward.
And I'll just add one more thing as well, is that also when you're in those situations, what are you learning from that situation as well? So, from that upset, from the feeling, whether it's anxious or sad, depressed, what are you learning from this? So I think that once you start to, as you mentioned, kind of looking at the situation from multiple perspectives, then you can use that situation to grow and evolve from. So a lot of times, a lot of the hardest challenges we have in life actually birth something new within ourselves, that it kind of allows us to step to another level of ourselves. So I would say it's also important to view it from that holistic perspective.
Well, I love all of those suggestions, and I love also how both of you all also emphasize nature, and the reason why, well, is because, as you know, our traditions come from that. But even though our traditions come from that, I've noticed that people tend to forget that in terms of practicality. It becomes like everything is like internet based, whatever, or ritual based. And for me, one of the greatest rituals is simply connecting to the earth. I mean, because we don't do that. And that's the medicine that we need, more of that simple, practical medicine. And you all spoke about that. Thank you so much for being, I guess you all had such wonderful nuggets. And again, for the viewers, if you haven't purchased any of their books or any of, their films, please do. They need your support so that they can continue bringing forth this information. Subscribe to the newsletter, check out their Facebook page. They do need your support. So, thank you so much. And that's ancestralvoices.com.
.co.uk.
Sorry, say that tell us.
Unfortunately, it was already gone. So .co.uk.
So .com
Cool.
.co.uk.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom. I'm proud of your journey.
No worries. That was quick.
Yeah, we've been talking for about an hour, but that was quick. We'll have to do it again.
Yes. Thank you too, Brother James.
Thank
you doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah, we love your work.
You're one of those. You're staying on the path, the commitment, the dedication. So
thank you, brother.
All
right.
Thank you very much for tuning in. Bye-bye.
All right. Sure.